But I gotta tell you, $1 million is not being paid by this.
I agree,
group.
Jim, I'm just saying as defined in 1265, foregone
And that's
taxes
the
only
unique,
relate
that's
to
the
the county
unique
share.
benefit, because we get $700,000 worth of, by foregoing those taxes, the state's not ripping us off by that 700,000.
Yeah, and that, Ken, that was my point. I know that there's, there's a lot of ways to, present a deal, and in years past, a lot of the benefit of the ag community in dollars has been left out, or maybe pretty much left out, but certainly not, highlighted. And also the fact that the state's role still in the program, it's a huge benefit, and they are still involved, and that's kind of not been talked about much. It's just kind of been the negative, like the Williamson Act program, but it's just all about the money that we would save if we didn't do it. So I just wanted to get all of the information out. And the also, I know the board set some new criteria, which is highlighted in here, which has led to some non-renewals. Just refresh my memory, we did have a discussion on some of the parcels that might have been caught in the non-renewal, might have been smaller parcels but part of the same farming operation, like, a 190 acre piece in the desert, if you will, and they might have an 800 and a this and a that, but as part of their like 3,000 acre cattle range. And how did we,
By definition, in resolution 1250, the unit to be looked at, the contract to be looked at was as per unique owner and what was under contract. So if the property in the Williams Act contract owned by an entity or an individual was less than 400 acres, it no longer qualified as being a viable economic unit eligible for Williamson Act unless it had at least adequate irrigation for 100 acres. So that was one category. 30 contracts fell into that category. Another category that was slated for non-renewal, or I like to call it initial non-renewal, and I'll get into that in a second, would be properties that had already sold or transferred their development rights to a conservation easement. And the idea, that concept was embraced by Supervisor Daly at the time, thinking about why are they getting a tax break to not develop the property if they already sold the development rights. The unique problem with that is the board only had the legal right under state law to initiate a non-renewal for everything that individual had under contract. So either you may have all this property in a conservation easement, or you might have just a portion of it. So the board had to notify and non-renew a whole contract and not just a portion. But the law also allows for the property owner to appeal a non-renewal. And even if the board doesn't approve the non-renewal and keeps the request to appeal the non-renewal and renews the property, the person doesn't get any negative tax impact for like 5 years. But once the property owner comes forth and might say, only half my property has a conservation easement, can't you leave the other half in? The board can determine to act on that request.
okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Ken, what's the attrition rate for these Williamson Act contracts?
As far as people non-renewing on their own, not a whole lot. There's people who have a small contract worried about their house burning down, where the law wouldn't let them rebuild. I had like 3 of those happen. Somebody wants to develop geothermal. I had a non-renewal there, but I probably don't even average 1 a year.
You had 25 non-renewals for this year?
No, those are historic. There's currently on the books over a 10-year period.
How many landowners have sold their development rights and are collecting Williamson Act?
There were 30 unique owners that way.
Really?
Yeah. But sometimes it's only like a 23-acre piece.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's one extreme. I think it was 39. And the other extreme is more like 99% of a large ranch. So you got all different circumstances. And sometimes there's millions of dollars involved in selling these conservation areas.
Right, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
I have a question for him. I have a question for Ken.
Okay, come up and state your name.
Say your name, Eileen.
Eileen Spencer, and I have a question for Ken. On this list, what would you say is the minimum time left and the maximum time left on this 32 people with their Williamson contracts?
They're all, if the non-renewal happens, they'll have 9 years left. Well, 10 years left, 9 with no tax, with a tax impact.
All of these?
Yeah, because they would all be initiated. Those aren't old ones. Those are proposed new ones. The property owners were all notified by registered mail on Friday, and they have the option to appeal the non-renewal and bring their issues to the board.
So these people have presently, before an action is taken, what is the term on their
10.
contract? Right now, they
Yeah.
have a 10-year
Yeah,
contract.
but that's misleading because it's a self-renewing 10 years. Some of these outfits have been in for 80 years. No, I overstated that, 40 years.
40 years?
Yeah, but it's self-renewing is the main point. You always have 10 years in unless the property owner non-renews or the government non-renews.
And where can a person obtain this type of document for those that have conservation easements?
They're recorded documents in the county recorder's office.
Would that be easy?
A lot of them are sorted by the type of document. So it's easy to about 90%, but nothing's 100% easy.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question of Ken, please? Iona McCain. I don't quite understand this, but I want to ask this stupid question, but a question's a question.
Yes.
If you have this Williams map, can you do other things on that property, like for instance windmills and things like that?
There are things that are considered
That are not-
compatible uses and some things that aren't, so
So
you
you
have
can't have
to.
other businesses other than
You
agriculture?
can't, no, you can't have a commercial enterprise, but you could generate power for your own
No, I
home
mean, lease it out.
and for your own equipment. But in most cases, you can't generate power.
Other businesses?
Right, there's some exemptions the state's working on for like solar, for instance.
Yes,
Yeah, so that's a possibility, but it'll probably be handled more county by county.
thank you, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one on the easements. When, Ken Whipple, and when you're in the Williamson Act, you're not gonna develop, you've made a deal to not develop, but when you sign a wildlife easement, you're protecting something for the public, not just for 10 years, you're protecting it for the life of the property. And I was just wondering, it seems to me like there's less chance for the landowner to get any income on it at all, because you get one payment. You know, and as far as I know, you get one payment. And then that's over. But it's locked up for life. So there ought to be less taxes on it. To me, you're protecting something for the general public. You know, some endangered species. Now we're protecting it for not development forever. So, it seems like that it should be less taxes on us.
Can I ask Ken to, the
Yeah.
assessor?
Right, the standard is the lower of the three values, either the Williamson Act value, the Prop 13 value of the whole property, or the market value of the whole property. So the extent that you can't generate any income on the property, it's gonna affect the market value. In some cases, it's only like 39 acres on a 2,000 acre spread.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, perhaps you'd come back to the board and ask them to just exclude the 39 acres from your contract. And they'll consider that, and they may do it. And what kind of value I'll put on that 39 acres, it's not gonna be a whole lot, because that's highly restricted. It's taking care of what are they, the hoppers?
Larson Wandering Strip.
There you go.
Ken, I have a question. So, say Ken Wimple
Mhm.
wants
Oh.
to sell his property and put a solar array in there with N-rail or something. Does the N-rail have to buy the back taxes on that property?
No, it'd be more of a non-renewal, takes 9 years to get out, unless the board decides that early cancellation's the only way to go, and there's findings the board has to do. The county's done it twice, but depending if the Department of Conservation is gonna be agreeable or not, it could be quite difficult. One of the findings is that you need this piece of ground and not another piece of sagebrush. And we got a lot of sagebrush.
So, are most of those Williamson Act people, they have conservation easements also?
Only 30 of them out of the 170.
Okay.
And those could just be a portion, but they'll have the right to come back in front of the board and appeal prior to January 1st of this year.
If I could interject, Tom, to answer your.
January 1st,
the short-
2014,
The short answer
excuse
to
me.
your question is yes. They would have to buy out the back taxes. If you want to unencumber the property to
Right.
do some sort of immediate type of development, that would be the cleanest and probably the best way for a big corporate
Right,
interest.
somebody
Yeah,
like to put a
big
solar
corporate
array.
would have to deal with. The short term, is that they can be patient and wait for the contract to eventually migrate out to the point where it's unencumbered. But until such a time as the contract is gone, they can pursue it. But that's how most of them would probably approach it, is cash out whatever the tax advantage has. And that's the expectation of the Williamson Act, is that if you're going to convert it immediately, they want whatever the tax break you've got over the last 10 years, you're gonna have to fork that up if you want to do something other than what the tax. The purpose of the Williamson Act is to preserve that land, so it's not gonna be used for anything but agriculture. So if you're gonna convert it, you're gonna have to pay.
So the concept's correct, it works more that way with TPD. For Williamson Act, it's at 25% of the value of the property in its new approved zoning and use. So it's a roughly 25% charge going forward. They don't really recalculate past history. But it is a monetary thing. We've only done it twice in this county. I think it's hard to actually get a immediate cancellation.
It's case by case, but the idea that you're gonna be able to convert it without paying something, whoever it is, better plan on paying something.
Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak on the matter?
Yeah, I had another question. Larry mentioned that, last night I talked to him, that maybe we could stick with the 10-year Williamson Act plan instead of
Yeah,
the 9.
that is one of the board's options in our packet, yeah.
Mhm.
Basically, there's either, the board's either gonna vote to non-renew, in which case the phase out the Williamson Act, or the choice is to support AB 1265, which reduces the benefit by 10% and reduces the length of the contract to either 9 or 18 years, or vote to not support AB 1265, in which case the contract remains at the 10-year or 20-year, and you retain all of your Williamson Act benefit. So those are the three choices before us today.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I, Galen Norwood, Chief Planner, Lassen County. I just wanted to, and on the agenda now is just 1265, which would reduce the terms. If the board wanted to look at the policies and procedures regarding non-renewal of specific Williamson Act contracts, it would need to be agendized at a future date.
Thank you for
But
that.
that would be an option. As of now, we're following the directives that the board gave us last year.
Thanks. If I can, yeah, sorry for the, there's basically two choices before us today. effectively support AB 1265, which would reduce the length of the contracts by 10% and your benefit by 10%, or not support 1265, which would not reduce the life of the contract nor the benefit. Apologize for that bit of misinformation, and thank you for bringing that correct. Was there any other questions from the audience? So I believe that this time we will close the public hearing at 10:53 and bring it back to the board. Start with you, Mr. Chapman.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to put on my county supervisor hat, because I want to look at the big picture, because if you just look at it from how your people are benefited, you know, the narrow constriction is, why is somebody getting tax relief and somebody else isn't? Because I think we have to look at the overall policy. The only reason why we're having this discussion is because the state of California reneged on a fundamental commitment they made more than 40 years ago when they established, this was their program, it wasn't a local program. And they tasked the county to administer the program for them, because that's where the property taxes are administered. And as a result, you know, the agreement that was made was that whatever that tax differential is, the state of California would make the county's interest and share whole. And they knew then, even then, that they were funding the school side of things, and the school part of it was already taken off the table, and it was really primarily the county. The special districts in the cities so small, they lose out regardless. But because of the politics in Sacramento, and because of the partisanship, the ultra-partisanship that is there, you know, the urban majorities with their liberal philosophies, you know, clearly want to punish the rural areas and their more conservative attitudes. And because they would not vote for certain things at the state level, and that was before they got the rules changed on the budgets and so forth, they took it upon themselves. They eliminated the money for our county fairs, and that was directly designed to attack the rural way of life. They eliminated and imposed this $150 parcel fire fee on the rural areas, and there again, that was a punitive measure that was brought forth to punish the rural legislators. And the third area was that they defunded the $38 million that would be the subvention statewide, and our share of it would be, you know, the $200,000, or could, at one point we were up maybe around $400,000. And that was all, that's the whole purpose behind this exercise. Now, we can kind of succumb to and play, you know, the games, okay, well, I'm going to just vote for my little people over here instead of looking at the interest of the county as a whole. So because of that, I'm not going to support the implementation of this 1265 rule that we've done over the last couple of years. Mainly because of the fact that I feel that, you know, it's a chance for us to rip them off. And I mean, if you want to look at it, and I realize that Ken, he operates over here in his little world, and Ken, you stay in your little world, okay? I'm going to talk about the rest of the world, and the $750,000 in terms of tax relief that comes back to the ag community in terms of what would be that school-funded share far outweighs the amount of money that we lose on this end. And that's $750,000 that they can invest in terms of our local economy. And I hope that they do. Now, it's been told that 60% of these people live outside of the county. So let's take 40% of the $750,000, and we know those dollars are here in Lassen County. That still outweighs the lost revenue the county would see under the $200,000. And the fact that we have an industry that contributes $100 million to the local economy in terms of what's being generated is significant and needs to be recognized. So the smart thing for the county to do is to play the game with, you know, with Sacramento. We'll take and rip them off, because if we make these people pay the full amount, that's $750,000 that those folks are going to have to pay, that the state will be relieved of in terms of their property tax, I mean their school-funded allocations coming in. Right now, they're having to take that out of the general, you know, fund of the state as a whole, and that's going to come in regardless. So why should we give them $750,000 to pay towards that $18 or $20 million burden that they have for Lassen County schools across the board? So to me, that's the issue that I see, and you know, it's a way of kind of poking the sticks right back at them politically for what I think is the fallacy. And then on top of it, I think the Williamson Act program on its surface has its own merit in terms of guaranteeing the protection of these particular farmlands. Do I like the way the game is being played? No, absolutely. I think the whole thing is repulsive, the way they have perverted the process. But at the same time, I think we have to look at the bigger picture. And, you know, if the county was financially broke, we were up to the point where we were shutting our doors and laying everybody off and not having any money in the bank, then I would say, yeah, we'd have to succumb to and say we need the $200,000, even though I know it's gonna cost them another $800,000 that they're gonna have to cough up to pay these other interests. But we're far from being broke as a county, and so the $200,000, I think, is is okay by me, and I think it's okay by the people of the county, and it's our way to work in partnership with one of the segments of our community for the betterment of our community, you know, and basically tell the state to go take a hike. We're not going to give you that money. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be not in favor of implementing 1265 this year.
Thank you.
Well, in view of the economic impact that the ag community has on the county, it'd be foolish for us to support 1265. I just can't justify that, so I will not be in favor of 1265.
You know, I'd like to say the couple of problems that I also have with it is, you know, one, it's not only do I not think that the ag needs a reduction in benefit or a reduction in incentive to carry on agriculture. It's this whole thing, you know, where every year busy people from the ag community, you know, have to make the annual trek to 707 Nevada to sort of listen to and hear, you know, the fate of their businesses, because most times there is an option, you know, to non-renew, and that's kind of why I was just sort of used to that being as part of the deal. I made the mistake, but pretty much every year that comes up, and it's one of the things. So you're doing you know, a family business. You're trying to carry on maybe, you know, second, third, fourth generation, and every year now it's been coming up, you know, where you got to go to this meeting and fill and try to put some show your support and not really knowing. I mean, imagine having a business that as a whole generates just one heck of a lot of money for the community, and always have this thing hanging over your head: is the program going to go away every year? I mean, it's crazy. The 1265, I mean, it sunsets in 2016. Also, it's not cheap to implement it for staff. If you look through here, there's a whole array of things staff has to do if we vote to implement it, as far as contacting people and this and that, and it's not just a gimme, if you will. There's money involved for us to implement it. There's a cost involved with that. Staff time, there's a cost involved to the ag community. So I won't be supporting that. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chairman, one other thing I want to make a point, and I think it's important that the record has. You know, over the last 2-3 years, since the state has forced this discussion by their action, you know, as we, as a board and as a county, evaluated the program that had been in place and how it evolved historically over the previous 40 years, I would say that there were some abuses of what the Williamson Act program was intended to do, and we had actually created some contracts that I think that did not meet the minimum standards in terms of size. And then over a period of time, as lands changed ownership and so forth, we even had some parcels that did not meet the minimum requirements that the program really envisioned, and for whatever reason, they were sitting there. And we've taken the task and have eliminated most of those from the program. So what we have left remaining with contract, we've non-renewed those that really are not that justifiable in terms of being in place. And it leaves the remainder, which is the bulk of these contracts that are before us. And I think it behooves us to maintain that relationship, and maybe at some point in time, the state of California will come back to its senses and will recognize the fact that they have reneged on this obligation and restore it. But in the meantime, you know, obviously, I think we need to work with the industry in terms of supporting them and what they bring back to the county in terms of the economy. But I think eliminating those non-compliant ones that we did over the last couple of years was probably the best thing we did, and we should have done that even if the state of California hadn't got into playing the games that they're playing.
The other thing I wanted to say is I'd like to take this meeting's opportunity to put something on a future agenda where I'd like to be involved and work on a resolution to bring back to the board that whereas we establish the current tax structure, tax base, if you will, for contract holders to be permanent, where it's not a with or without, you know, that we don't have to come back. Well, we know 1265 is going away, but I'd like to work on a resolution that will have many findings to support basically, as the assessor said, is a 24% decrease in revenue to support the business. And I think that if there was any other segment of business or manufacturers that wanted to come to the podium and show us a business plan where they're going to generate $500 million in their 5-year business plan and asked for a 24% concession on property taxes, I mean, we've opened them with, welcome them with open arms. And, you know, the county's built on agriculture, and it's a small incentive on our side to give to ensure that it continues, that it thrives, that it can be passed on, that it never ends up on a tax roll that goes up and up and up and up, because that just kills not only business, it kills the private individual, you know, everything. It's ridiculous. And agriculture does not need to deal with that problem. So I'd like to agendize that for the future to work on, where we could do, the board could come and vote on a resolution to fix this problem on a permanent base, and that will give the ag community peace of mind, and they don't need to be coming here every 12 months wondering about their livelihood. So that's all I have to say.
Was an action in order? Do we need to take a vote?
I
mean,
think
the agenda item for the board is to implement 1265, but there's no action. I think that's the end of the.
I think rather than having a non-action speak for itself, I, Mr. Chairman, make a motion that the board not proceed with the implementation of 1265.
And I'll second it.
Do we need a roll call, or just all in favor? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You declare the motion unanimous.
Motion is unanimous. And I want to thank everybody for coming, and I also want to apologize for everybody having to come. I know you got a lot better things to do, and I'm going to be committed to work with my board members to try and work on a permanent fix. So this time next year, you know, everybody doesn't have to leave their work and hay and cows and stuff and come here. It's ridiculous. And I want to thank my fellow board members for also their commitment to business and agriculture. And you know, the agriculture is thriving in the state. And I mean, how strange is it? It's not a coincidence. I mean, it's the one business that the state has stood behind and incentivized, you know, all the
Except for the legislature.
the manufacturing, the high tech, it's all gone. The agriculture thrives, and we need to do what we can to protect. The money comes back tenfold. Let me get back where I belong here, so this comes to a close.
Thank you.
Very well.
Wagon train?
Just sat right next to me. I mean, if it was recorded, I think it would have come up.
Well, what if it is recorded?